Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of our Connecting East and West podcast with me, your host journalist. Connecting East and West is an initiative by East Consulting, the leading business and advisory firm bridging businesses between Asia and Latin America. Connecting East and West is your monthly space dedicated to bringing helpful ideas and high caliber views on the business landscape of these two regions. Connecting East and West by East Consulting is your partner to connect and make the most out of both regions. And I'm sure you're gonna enjoy very much the next 25 minutes of conversation with our very special guest today, Carlos Kuriyama. Carlos is a Peruvian national who is the director of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, Policy Support Unit's Research and Analysis Arm, very well known for its acronym PSU, right? Before his current position, Carlos was an official of Peru's Ministry of Foreign Trade and Tourism, where he served as a lead negotiator for the Peru-China FTA negotiations, general coordinator of the Peru-Singapore FTA negotiations, and advisor to the Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade. Carlos has also led the design of Peru's trade negotiations agenda and implemented Peru's trade strategy with a number of APEC economies. Based in Singapore right now, in working for APEC, Carlos has been also an associate researcher and lecturer in economics at the Universidad del Pacifico in Peru, and has written extensively and participated in several research projects on trade, investment, and integration issues for several domestic and international institutions. Welcome to Connecting East and West, Carlos. It's great to see you here.
Good morning, Luis Alberto. Nice to see you again, and thank you so much for the kind invitation.
Good evening for you there in Singapore. I really appreciate it. I know it's late for you. So let's begin our conversation by talking a bit about your personal experience in Asia. I mean, despite having an extensive and really high-level career working in Peru, you have been living over quite a few years now in Singapore, right? For APEC. So where the PSU's headquarters are located. Which are the two or three aspects, Carlos, that you would point out as to living in one of the most developed nations in Asia, and by the way, in the world, as someone from Latin America, as a Peruvian?
Well, it's been 17 years, nearly 17 years since I came to
17
Singapore.
years. Wow.
I never expected I was going to be here for such a long time, but thankfully things have been, going well. We've been able to develop good work in the APEC Secretariat, and things are very interesting, and that's how I'm staying here for such a long time. I would say, back to your question, I think being in Singapore is a unique opportunity. It's a place where we learn a lot every day. Singapore, to start with, is one of those few successful cases in which a country and economy could make a transition from the third to the first world in less than 50 years. So Singapore, I would say it's a good example of best practices, good practices. So the Singaporean government trains officials well. They put a lot of importance to education in general. They send, officials all over the world so they could learn about these good practices. And so at the end of the day, what they do is to incorporate best practices in Singapore or adapt those practices from other places to the Singapore reality. Another thing that is important to highlight about Singapore is that it's a very safe place, it's well organized, it has a fantastic urban planning, good education, as I said before, and a good health system. And for businesses, what I could say is that the business atmosphere is excellent. It's a place where East and West meet, actually. Singapore knows both of the Asian mindset and the Western mindset. They know how these mindsets work, and Singapore uses it to its advantage. Also, something to take into account is that Singapore used to be a British colony, and the British have been in history very good traders.
Mhm.
And also, around 80% of the population is of Chinese descent. And we all know also that the Chinese community has been also fantastic doing business. And so they have the best of both worlds. That's what makes Singapore very exciting.
So I would say that you are not coming back to Peru any longer, probably. I mean, the standard of living is so high in Singapore, and you seem to be so happy there. Huh? But who
It's
knows,
a
right?
it's a good opportunity to be here. I would encourage anyone, if anyone has an opportunity to come here, please do it.
Okay, so let's go straight to the to business, Carlos.
Sure.
APEC, right? You've
Okay.
been 17 years working for the, let's say, APEC overall system. APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, that's what APEC actually stands for, includes 21 economies from Asia, from the Americas, and from Oceania as well, including, and that's an important point here in the against the backdrop of our conversation, including three Latin American economies, which are Peru, your home country, right? Chile, and Mexico. But particularly, I mean, how important would you say as the whole APEC process being to bring together Latin American countries? I mean, these three, I know, I mean, we know there's a moratorium for the incorporation of more countries, but I mean, thus far, three Latin American countries with their Asian partners. I mean, to actually connect East and West, which is the purpose of this podcast. I mean, how important would you say APEC has been to get these countries together?
I think APEC has been very important to get Asia and the Americas closer. APEC has been a very important player for that. So because of APEC, now there is a better understanding in the Americas, in particular in Chile, Peru, Mexico, about Asia. And also in Asia, there's a better understanding about Latin America because of the participation of three Latin American members, right? So I think there's more awareness, and both sides are learning what the other side of the Pacific Ring can offer. And so they are more aware about opportunities. And you see this issue about opportunities because in APEC, the leaders, that means the prime ministers, presidents, they meet at least once a year. Then we have the ministers of different portfolios that also meet once a year. But the trade ministers meet twice a year. We have senior officials that meet 4 times a year at least, and technical experts in different areas that meet between 2 to 3 times a year. So all this familiarity among government officials and authorities has helped to strengthen relations. The bilateral relationships among all these members are much stronger nowadays. And this has motivated APEC, individual APEC economies, we don't call it them countries, we call them economies, to pursue, to propose, okay, let's have a free trade agreement together. Let's have a bilateral investment treaty. Let's have a memorandum of understanding on different issues. Let's have let's sign a sanitary and phytosanitary protocol to facilitate the access of agricultural products. etc., etc., etc. So because of this, now we can see that Chile, Peru, and Mexico have different, initiatives with individual Asian economies. And I remember some time ago, I was in Peru and in an event, and one person asked me, and how it's for Peru, it's easy to have these deals with Asian economies, and we don't see Peru having much with economies in the Caribbean. And the reason is because we don't have a forum where government officials meet very often, unlike APEC. So that's why APEC has really helped Chile, Peru, and Mexico to get closer to Asia.
And to your point of the, I mean, all these activities, right? I mean, there's a lot of movements and I mean, high level meetings. I mean, less high level meetings, but a lot of activity anyway, in different formats under APEC. And connected to that, I mean, APEC is a non-binding forum, and this is perhaps, I don't know what you think. You can tell me about this, but perhaps in my view, this has been the main explanation of, or an important part of the explanation for APEC's success actually thus far. I mean, since its foundation in the early 90s. I mean, the fact that absolutely everything needs to be agreed by consensus. We're talking about 21 economies, I mean, from different cultural backgrounds and economies and political regimes and so on and so forth. So in this regard, would you say that this non-binding feature has played a significant role in spurring mutual knowledge, which is what you were talking about before, right? Between Latin American economies participating in APEC and the Asian economies, and I mean, by extension, among all the members, of course.
The non-binding mechanism has helped a lot APEC. Why? Because members can discuss sensitive economic issues. If APEC had been a binding forum instead, government officials would have been so careful to speak, and they would have probably not bring to the table, many topics. For example, we can discuss things about business mobility. We can discuss things related to trade restrictive measures, because everything is non-binding, which means that decisions are also voluntary. So the implementation is voluntary. That has helped also to discuss the things in a candid way, understand the other sides better, the concerns of other parties, and then in that way, APEC could be a sort of a lab of ideas to try to find, solutions, achieve consensus, and in the best cases, bring a common position to other fora where the discussions are binding. So that has been one of the strengths of APEC.
And perhaps another significant feature of APEC, Carlos, and I think it's quite unique of APEC, is the participation of the private sector, right? There's the APEC Business Advisory Council, and which is quite unique, as I said, because it's been in place since the very beginning, since the mid 90s, approximately. And what role would you assign to APEC, right? The participation of the private sector in APEC, and how important would you say has been at the end for the success of this forum?
The participation of the private sector is very important. Governments need feedback. Reforms are successful when the public sector and the private sector work together. It's important to get feedback from those that are on the field. So the business community knows knows about the problems that they are experiencing, the bottlenecks, and then government officials are more aware of the situation and they can evaluate and discuss, propose potential solutions. So at the end of the day, things that are implemented or agreed by governments who use those tools, I mean, it's the business community and the citizens. So that's why it's important to have this stakeholder engagement and to have these discussions, these coordinations.
Okay. Carlos, the PSU that you led has conducted extensive research over the last few years on the many aspects impacting trade and FDI flows in the region, in the APEC region, and by extension, one could say across the Asia Pacific region as a whole as well, right? And unfortunately, this list has grown substantially and includes a battery of non-tariff measures and more demanding national security considerations, among other components, including corruption. I mean, as highlighted, by the PSU itself in its recent latest policy brief on investment facilitation and quality. I think that was launched just as early as last December. So what's your take on these trends in terms of their potential to harm the business environment in the region, and particularly between the Latin American economies and Asian and their Asian partners?
Thanks for the question. I think we are finding out some trends that are affecting not just businesses in Latin America, but also in Asia and all over the world. The first one is the policy uncertainty. So 2025 was the calendar year with the highest levels of policy uncertainty ever. We face a lot of changes in the rules. I would say in the case of the firms, I know firms don't like trade restrictions, but more than that, what they don't like is frequent changes to policies, frequent changes to the rules. So that has affected investment decisions, for example, or decisions by firms, whether shall we buy these machines, these inputs now, shall we buy it from this market or the other market? So there was a lot of uncertainty. Then the other problem is, of course, the increased protectionism. So that's a problem, and this is not just about tariff rates, it's also about non-tariff measures, as you said. I think firms, because of these issues, they are reacting by reorganizing their global value chains. For example, they are diversifying their suppliers. They are also diversifying their clients, so trying to find out new markets. The business model has changed from a just-in-time model where companies were sourcing parts, components, machines, technology from the cheapest place from all over the world, to now the model is a sort of a just-in-case model, where the businesses are building redundancies, inventory redundancies to improve resilience. So they are trying to get supplies from different sources, but this is more costly. And there's a trade-off at the end between long-term resilience and short-term profits. So that's some of the trends that we are noticing. Then there are other trends that are affecting businesses. For example, what's the role of digitalization, AI, and the other new technologies? They are making things efficient in many cases, but there's a cost to incorporate technology as well. Also, there are issues that are raising about, for example, demographics. Demographics are shifting. We have an aging population, we have a shrinking labor force, and this has implications on economic growth, on government revenue, tax collection, and also on public expenditure in, for example, health, social systems, social safety nets, pensions, among other things. So those are some of the trends that we are finding out and that could in businesses.
But despite, I mean, of course, all those things are in place and are having an impact. That my impression is that, I mean, based on your, I mean, on the PSU's latest report on investment facilitation, my impression is that there's still progress. I mean, that you at the end you are optimistic about the situation, the overall situation for investment at least. Trade maybe is a little bit more complex given the the current geopolitical landscape. But if I may, I'd like to read a specific message that is contained in your latest report on investment facilitation, which has struck a chord with me actually. It says there's a notable shift within the landscape of international investment agreements, such as from sole focus on investment protection toward more comprehensive investment facilitation frameworks in contemporary treaty practice, which include provisions to improve regulatory environment and promote transparency. Could you elaborate a little bit further on what this exactly means?
Yeah. This is an important point. I think now what governments are doing is to find ways to improve the business environment, the investment environment. All governments are competing for investment. And we can see in the statistics that foreign direct investment has been recovering in the last few years. There's a lot of investment going to certain sectors, for example, the digital economy. Since the last decade, this is not as recent, it's coming from the 2010s. Governments are, for example, streamlining investment procedures. For example, to get permits, to meet requirements, right? Governments are trying to make all these procedures simpler, faster, and cheaper, implementing single windows where investors could submit all the documentation in one go. They are also enhancing transparency in ways like where we can find the relevant legal information, the laws, all these regulations, rules. There are also more consultation mechanisms for proposed reforms, for changes in the investment frameworks. We are also noticing that many of these international investment agreements are looking not just at issues related to investment liberalization or investment protection, but also they are looking at things like dispute prevention. It's not just dispute resolution mechanisms, but they are also interested on dispute prevention. I think what investors in general, what they want is more transparency, more predictability in the rules, and consistency in the investment policies. And what investors are doing, and also the government is starting to do as well, is to have a more proactive stakeholder engagement. There's more coordination nowadays.
Perfect. Of course, but I mean, so my impression out of what you just said is that you are optimistic about the, I mean, about the investment landscape in general. In terms of trade, are you as optimistic as you seem to be when it comes to investment? And another question related to that one is, overall, considering the investment, environment and the trade landscape, Would you say that there's, and despite all the geopolitical tensions in the region and in the world, I mean, in general, right? Would you say that the current one is a good moment for intensification in terms of businesses between Latin America in particular and Asia?
When we see trade flows, we can see that trade flows in certain regions have grown significantly. For example, intra-Asia trade has skyrocketed. Trade between Asia and Europe the same. Asia and South America, Latin America also has been doing well. The issue is between Asia and North America. That's where there has been some troubles in terms of the evolution of the trade flows. But what we can also see is that many governments are still very active signing, negotiating trade agreements. Right? For example, I remember last year Indonesia and Peru signing a free trade agreement. There are more governments applying for membership in the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Partnership for Trans-Pacific, right? Then the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in Asia. There are also many applicants to become members. Chile is one of them, for example. So there's a lot of interest to continue having a free and open trade regime. I would say those governments that think differently are the minority.
Perfect. And Carlos, we're running out of time, but I would like to finish with a question on the digital transformation. Also, again, out of your latest report on the facilitation investment across the region, digital transformation remains, you said, at the heart of modern investment facilitation, which is quite a strong statement, right? How do you assess the progress on this front in the region? And again, how relevant would you say is at the end for getting closer Asian and Latin American markets?
Digitalization is moving very fast, very fast. I would say, for example, there are a lot of digitally delivered services nowadays. And when we look at the trade of digitally delivered services, they are exceeding, I mean, the amount of trade by non-digitally delivered services. That's one example. We can see that in terms of trade, regarding trade facilitation, the trend is moving towards the digitalization of trade platforms. So nowadays we have around 10 to 20 documents to require to export or import. Many of them are paper-based, but little by little we are incorporating more digital documents. If we digitalize all those documents, there will be significant economic gains. Some studies indicate that the economic gains would be around $5 to $11 billion in the APEC region. But I mean, despite all the progress, I think there are some challenges for businesses in general, and that would affect also the businesses between Asia and Latin America. The first one is that digital services, for example, are data intensive. The digital economy is data intensive, but there are more and more restrictions to cross-border data flows. For example, in terms of data storage, data processing, and that could affect the development of the digital economy in the future. Also, digital economy is very intensive in electricity. It requires a lot of electricity. Here in Asia, this decade, the demand for electricity is going to more than double. It's important.
And to that point, Carlos, are you seeing opportunities, for example, for Latin American countries as suppliers of green energy, for example? We've got the case of Chile with the green hydrogen, Peru as well. I mean,
it's a possibility. Yeah, and also attract investors in Latin America in these types of non-renewable energy. So yeah, that's an opportunity. But there are also other basic things about the digitalization that we need to catch up in. Latin America needs to catch up in comparison to Asia. For example, there are issues concerning digital literacy. The percentage of people that have, for example, bought something online is much lower in Latin America in comparison to Asia. The percentage of adults that have made or received digital payments is much lower in Latin America in comparison to Asia. For example, let's put something very basic. Internet users in Malaysia, Singapore is close to 100%, between 95 to 100%. But in Peru, in Chile, and Mexico, that are APEC members, the percentages are much lower. Just to give you an idea, in general in APEC, right, around 1/3 of adults have never bought anything online in the APEC region. So that's
Wow.
those are very interesting.
I was not expecting that figure. Actually, quite surprising.
Yeah, 1/3 of
Excellent.
the adult population have not bought things online.
So there's
Yeah.
room for I mean, there's room for growth. I mean, absolutely
A lot.
for growth. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, Carlos, we've come to the end of our episode. Thank you so much. I think it's been quite a comprehensive conversation. We've gone through trade, investment, digital economy, and overall opportunities between Latin American businesses and Asian ones as well. Thank you so much, Carlos, and hope you are getting ready for what seems to be a very intense APEC year, which is going to be under the chairmanship of China this year. And all the best, and see you down the road.
Thank you so much again, Luis Alberto. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and look forward to any future opportunity to talk again.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.